everybody, this is Tracy here again with a view from Tracy's Point. I know you guys have never received this many videos in one day, okay, but I am trying to get caught up on these transcripts, and we can't seem to get Reshona Landfair off of this witness stand. So we are still on August 19th. Jennifer Bonjean is now doing cross-examination of Reshona Landfair. And so we're going to pick up. It is after the morning break, and they are getting back into this cross-examination. And I think Jennifer is talking about Sparkle at this point. And if you look above, there's a link to a video that Sparkle did where she was denouncing everything that Reshona, who is her niece, was saying in court about her. So hold tight and we'll be right back. Okay, so Bonjean is still talking. The court comes in. He says, please be seated. And the court, you guys know, it's the judge. And then Bonjean, he says, you may conclude your cross. And then she says, thank you, Your Honor. Then she's talking to Reshona Landfair, who has been on the witness stand since, so this was a Friday, and Reshona has been on the witness stand, I believe, since that Wednesday afternoon. Okay, so she says, Reshona, and Reshona is going by Jane, the pseudonym Jane during testimony. So if I slip up and say Jane, you guys know I'm still talking about Reshona. So it says, I want to go back to, just for reference, after this video goes into the public, that must have been super upsetting to you, right? Yes. You said it's embarrassing, right? Correct. And it was after that happened that you and Robert and your parents had this emotional meeting in Oak Park, right? At a hotel, is that correct? Yes. You said that Robert broke down. Your father, you know, was upset, and that your father told Robert, man, I can't help you, right? Yes. And Robert was apologetic, correct? Yes. He didn't threaten your parents, right? No. He was deeply remorseful during the meeting, right? Yes. And you were upset because you didn't want the relationship to end either, right? Right. And again, at this point, you're 17 years old. And at that point, you didn't need to hide your relationship anymore, correct? That was not to my understanding at the time. I didn't know that. Okay. But you certainly didn't want the relationship to end, right? And you didn't want your parents to get in any type of trouble for anything, right? Right. You didn't want to get into trouble for anything, correct? Correct. You didn't want Robert to be in trouble for anything, right? Right. And Robert, well, it was, who came up with the idea, as far as you know, that maybe when this video was getting released into the public and was that, that perhaps it was a good time to get out of town for a few weeks? Robert. Okay. And did he say, and I think you testified yesterday that he said, go and, think on it, because your dad was like, I can't help you, man, right? Right. And you and your parents then went to the Bahamas and Mexico, right? Yes. And this was supposed to be this time of reflection about, what course you were going to take, right? Correct. You said you were in contact with Robert, but Robert didn't go on this trip with you, correct? Yes, that's correct, right? That is correct. Okay, and it was during this period of time that you also got a tattoo with Robert's name or initial. Is that correct? It was with his name, yes. And you were very hopeful for a future relationship with Robert at that point. Yes, I did believe his promises, yes. Okay, and you did have a future relationship with him. You ended up being with him for another 10 years, right? Yes. And the trip was a couple of weeks. Is that right? Yes. Okay. And then you came back. The problem didn't go away, right? Right. Your parents still had to be interviewed by the police. Isn't that right? I can't remember. And in fact, they were interviewed by the police after they came back from that trip, correct? I can't remember how their setup was exactly. I'm not sure. Well, let me see if you remember this. Do you remember going with your parents for an interview with Chicago police detectives? Yes. And do you remember not speaking to them? You had a lawyer and you did not make any statements to the Chicago Police Department at that time. Appleton. Objection, Your Honor. As to foundation, as to the time frame, if we could just specify when we're talking about. Bonjean. Sure, I can put I'm talking about March of 2002. Do you remember sitting down or going to the police station with your parents? Yes. Okay, and you did not speak to Detective Everett at that time, correct? I don't remember not speaking. Okay, do you remember speaking? I don't remember speaking or not speaking. Girl. Okay, got you. Do you remember your parents being interviewed? I actually don't remember that interaction all the way. I don't remember that interaction all the way. Okay, but you do remember that you had counsel and your parents had counsel before you went there, right? Yes. And you consulted with your counsel before this interview, fair? Yes. And then it wasn't for a little bit, maybe like a month or so later, that you all received subpoenas to testify before the grand jury, right? Right. And you had counsel for that also, correct? Yes. And you consulted with your counsel before you testified before the grand jury, correct? Yes. And you've testified today and yesterday that you testified untruthfully, right? Yes. Because you wanted to protect Robert, right? Yes. So you had a number of your own reasons why you didn't want this to come out. Legitimate reasons, correct? Correct. And your parents too testified untruthfully, right? As far as you know, yes. And they had their own reasons for not wanting it to come out, correct? Miss Appleton. Objection, Your Honor. Again, her testifying about what her parents' reasons were calls for speculations. Judge. Well, it's pretty her own reasons, obviously. Overruled. I don't know why I laugh every time this man overruled these people. Okay, hold on a second. I gotta close this thing out here that keeps blocking what I am trying to do. Okay. So Bonjean says, you had conversations with your parents about this, right? And then she says, yes. And your mom did not want this to be out there, right? Correct. And your dad too, correct? Uh-huh. So they go that uh-huh again, which means that the dad was like, we ain't doing this. So, okay, now, and it's not until fast forward to, I guess, now 2019, that you are actually now coming forward and telling the truth about this, right? Yes, and that's under an immunity deal with the government, correct? Correct. And your immunity deal doesn't just cover you for past perjury, right? It covers you really for anything that might be related to Mr. Kelly or really anything related to your conduct as well, right? Can you repeat that? Hold on one second. Let me pull it up. First of all, you had... Oh, come on. Move out the way. Okay, first of all, you had that negotiated on your behalf, right? Yes. And your immunity deal basically says that nothing you say, nothing you reveal during the course of your interviews with the government can be used against you in any way, right? As long as you come in here and tell the truth. Yes. And they are the arbitrators of what the truth is. Is the truth as determined by the government correct? I'm telling my truth. I don't know how it's determined after that. Well, I understand you're telling your truth, but it's the government that gets to decide whether your truth is the truth, right? Well, Appleton. Objection, Your Honor. It calls for speculation from the witness. Judge, well, it's what her understanding is, but I think she's answered it. She doesn't know. Bonjean, well, I'm going to mark as, what are we at? Defendant Kelly, 103. Cohen, 102. Bonjean, 102. I'm going to ask that you look at the screen, Reshona. Do you recognize this document? Yes. Okay. And if you read the first paragraph to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. This is to help refresh your recollection. Okay, thank you. Let me know when you're finished. I'm just reading the first paragraph, correct? Yeah, for now. Okay, I'm done. Okay, so it was your attorney who advised the government that you had information that may tend to incriminate you, right? Yes. All right. And the government agreed that none of that information that you relayed to them will, in connection with this case, so anything you tell them will be used against you in any criminal prosecution. Isn't that right? Yes. She said will be used against you. It should be will not be used against you. Okay. Yes. And they even promised that no leads or information directly or indirectly derived from this investigation could be used against you in a criminal prosecution, correct? I'm not exactly sure what that means. Well, you signed this document, correct? I did. You presumably understood it when you signed it, right? Yes, if you can just rephrase how you're saying it so I can understand. Sure, why don't I? Look at the second paragraph, and if you peruse it, it probably was a bad question on my part. So let me go ahead and read, and then I'll ask it. Okay. So they've agreed that no leads or information directly or indirectly derived from the information you provide can be used against you in some type of legal or criminal prosecution, right? Yes. And the government didn't specify just perjury. The agreement is broader than that. It's pretty much anything can't be used against you in a criminal prosecution, right? Yes. And then, if you could, read the last paragraph there to yourself where it starts as stated. Let me know when you're finished. Okay. So the government says you have to tell truthful and complete testimony, but in the event that they determine that you violated this provision or they determine that you didn't give truthful testimony, then there would be consequences for that, right? Yes. Okay. So it's them making that determination, not you. Correct. Okay, you can take that down. So you testified yesterday that your parents weren't able to work when the tape came out, but your identity wasn't associated with them. Why weren't they able to work? Because Robert asked them not to work because he didn't want attention being drawn to them, which is why we took the vacation as well. You took a vacation for 2 weeks. It wasn't prosecuted for 6 years later, right? I'm sorry. You took a vacation for 2 weeks. Right after the case kind of blew up, and he did that so you could go collect your thoughts and give some consideration, right? Yes. Okay, but the case wasn't prosecuted for another 6 years, right? Right. And it's your testimony that Robert said don't work for 6 years. No, my dad was still a musician during that time, so he was still working. Right, so he was working, correct? Yes. In fact, he was working on some of Robert's albums, but he was also working on other things as well, right? Yes. And there's nothing about your parents working that would draw attention to this because nobody knew who your parents were in connection with this, right? That's not true. Okay. How would your parents working bring attention to this prosecution? Because a lot of people knew that my father was a musician for Mr. Kelly, worked closely with them, that he was my godfather. We were in a local city. There were rumors, names released, etc. Okay, and there were rumors swirling, and it's your position that Robert told your parents don't work because there's rumors out there. Initially, when things first started happening, yes. Okay, but your parents did work. Like you went on vacation and then they came back and you picked up your lives, correct? Eventually, yes. And that was all before the 2008 prosecution, correct? Yes. A couple other things. I want to show you a picture. Do you recognize that person? Yes. Who do you recognize that to be? Robert's wife. Okay, does that fairly and accurately depict Robert's wife at various, I guess, ages? Yes. You knew her for many, many years. You lived under her roof, right? Yes. Okay, I would ask that it be admitted and that it be published to the jury. Appenting, no objection. Oh yes, I'm sorry. This was his ex-wife too, right? Yes. Okay, he's not married to her anymore, correct? In fact, he got divorced while he was with you, right? Yes, to be with you, correct? That wasn't my understanding. It was because their marriage didn't work out. All right, and you testified that when you lived under her roof as an adult, that there was sexual interaction between you and her and Mr. Kelly, right? Correct. Okay, you can take that down. And I want to show you a picture of... And do you recognize this woman? Yes. And who is this woman? My Aunt Stephanie. Also known as Sparkle? Correct. Does this fairly represent Sparkle at various ages? Yes. Okay, I'd ask that it be admitted and published. Appenting, no objection. Bonjean, okay, this is the judge. No objection, it's admitted. You may publish. Okay, thank you. Said exhibit received in evidence. Bonjean, this is the Sparkle that you've said that she encouraged you to ask Robert to be your godfather and had you sit on his lap and rub his head and all that, right? Yes. Do you speak with Sparkle today? No. You can take that down. And finally, do you recognize this woman? No. Okay, this is Government Exhibit 106. Would you agree that it appears to be a woman with a scarf that is in a checkered pattern? Yes. And you don't have any idea who this woman is, right? No. Okay, you can take that down. No, take it down. She doesn't know who it is. So, child, well, who is she? We want to know. Okay. Tell us who it is. Okay, so you testified yesterday that sometimes, and I think you said in connection with video 2, that Robert gave you Cristal to drink. Is that right? I can't remember the number of the video, but that did happen, yes. And you said you watched all the videos. Is that right? I did, yes. Did you ever see any Cristal in any of those videos? Like the bottle or the glass? Yes, anything. Yes, I was drinking out of glasses in one of the videos. Yes. It was a tumbler it was like a big plastic cup, right? It was a glass cup. It wasn't like a champagne glass, right? No. Okay. And it's your testimony that it wasn't juice or water. Correct. It was just a big cup of Cristal. Correct. And since you've been cooperating or, agreeing to be cooperative with the government, you've also asked the government for help, just even in the last couple of years, right? Yes. Assistance. They've given you money, correct? When I'm on their behalf, yes. Yes, they have provided you with money since you've been cooperating with their investigation, right? No. I mean, if you can be a little bit more specific, I can answer better. But they don't just hand me money. Okay, they've given you benefits, right? Yes. Okay. What have they given you since the beginning of this investigation as a benefit? As a benefit, they've helped me with housing, and they've just, if I have to travel to come for any reason, just like for food or travel expense or parking or something, anything else, not that I can think of, no. And when you say they helped you with housing, they helped you get Section 8 housing, didn't they? Yes, and Section 8 housing is a pretty good benefit, isn't it? It is. And you can have that for a lifetime, right? I'm not aware of that. You can pass that on to people in your family even, right? I didn't know that. Section 8 housing isn't easy to get, is it? No. And they paid your down payment for the Section 8 housing. Yes, they helped me with living because I was not working at the time, and I was not able to. I was afraid for my safety with cooperating with them, so that was a way of them making sure my son and I were secure. Speaking of your son, you sent pregnancy photos of yourself to the former U.S. attorney, right? Yes, I did. That was AUS Kroll. Are you referring to Angel? Angel, yes. Yes. You were on that type of level of familiarity that you sent her your, was it bare belly? Well, I'm not exactly sure what picture I sent her, but they have seen me in a pretty negative light. So I thought it was okay to share something positive with them. And she said you were glowing. You look lovely, right? Yes. And she calls you by your nickname, Boss Baby, right? Yes. She has referred to me as that before, but that's not what she calls me. Okay, give me a second. Okay, one last area, Your Honor. I'm going to have you look at, I guess we're at Defendant's Exhibit 105. Just show it to the witness, please, first. I'm going to scroll through this and ask you to look at it and tell me if you recognize these text exchanges. Okay? And then Reshona says, I'm done. Okay, go to the next page. And then Reshona says, okay. Almost finished? Bonjean, girl. Let me see. So then what happened? And then Reshona says, okay. I think that's the last page. Okay. And then Bonjean says, okay. Do you recognize these text exchanges with... Y'all know the page don't want to cooperate. Okay, I think that's the last page. Okay, do you recognize these text exchanges with the Assistant State Attorney, Angel Kroll? Okay, do they fairly and accurately represent your messages with the former state attorney? When I say former, I mean she's not on this team right here, right? Correct. And do they fairly and accurately depict those messages? Yes. Okay, Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to admit them and publish them. I just have 3 questions I want to ask her about it. All right, any objection? They're admitted. You may publish. And so Defendant Kelly Exhibit 105 received in evidence. Bonjean. Okay, go to the first page. The Assistant State's Attorney has you in her phone as Boss Baby, right? Yes. Is that what she called you? She referred to me that sometimes, yes. Okay. And I see that you were using emojis to, I guess, a heart emoji to communicate that you loved her message or something like that. Yes. And is this how you communicated pretty typically with the U.S. Attorney? Yes. On one other page, she referred to you as BB, right? Correct. That's like Boss Baby. Yes. And then if you go to the last page, you asked her, did Amelia share the pictures? What pictures were you referring to? My pregnancy photos. Okay. And the assistant U.S. attorney says, just one, the green outfit, so beautiful. You are glowing. I'm very happy and excited for you, right? Yes. Okay. And were these professionally taken photos? Yes. Okay. And again, this was the nature of your relationship with the U.S. attorney when you were leading up to this trial, right? This reflects that, correct? Yes. You talked on the phone too. Yes. Okay. And did you have the conversations about restitution with her on the phone? No, not that I can remember over the phone. Who did you speak to about the restitution? The restitution was, I actually can't remember how it started out. From what I remember is that we were in person when that was presented to us. Okay, and she presented it to you, right? Yes. Okay, I have one. I'm finished, Judge. And then she goes on and she says, and when you say us, who are you talking about? I'm sorry, can you refresh my memory on when I said that? You just said she was talking to us. Well, that was other people who were in the room as at the time. You're talking about your friends, right? No, what friends? I'm confused. Who is the us? So there were multiple people in the room with Angel at the time that she and I had the conversation. So I'm referring to everyone who was in that room at the time. And I'm asking who the us is. Well, me and my parents. Okay, so your parents also are due for restitution as well, right? No, you're confusing me. I'm sorry. I'm thinking you're talking about the immunity level. Lord, it's getting late, y'all. Immunity letter, not restitution. Okay, I got confused. I apologize. It's all right. Can you repeat that for me so I can? Sure. Answer clearly. Yes. Who told you about the restitution that you were entitled to? Angel. Okay, and when did that conversation take place? That was in person during one of our meetings. My lawyer was actually involved in that conversation as well. Okay, anyone else? Not that I can remember. I'm not sure though. And how much time was spent talking about restitution? I didn't understand it, so it wasn't much time spent on it at all. I actually got clarity through my lawyer. Got you. Okay. And finally, just for clarity's sake, you also were provided with U.S. Attorney's Office flights to and from Florida, right? With your cousin, correct? Yes, she was there with me, yes. And you got expenditures for hanging out in Florida, right? No, at the time, I was afraid of my safety, so they let me decide where I would like to go and be away from everything that was getting ready to take place. That's right. Sort of like Mr. Kelly did back in 2002 when y'all went on y'all vacation, right? Well, when was this? This was during the arrest, I believe. So, well, this was in June of 2019, right? That sounds about right. Mr. Kelly was arrested before June of 2019, right? I'm not sure. No, he was arrested July 11th. Okay, Appentine. Objection, Your Honor. In terms of what arrests we're talking about, 2 arrests have been talked about this case in 2002 and in this case. Okay, after. Clarify it. I'm sorry. Clarify it then. Okay, after Mr. Kelly was arrested in the early part of 2019, he made bond, right? Okay, she's talking about the state case. Yes. Are you aware of that? Yes. He didn't make any contact with you, correct? No. That's correct, right? That is correct. Okay. And so you, because of Mr. Kelly being arrested, you were able to go to Florida on vacation with your cousin to get out of Dodge, right? It wasn't just about that. With the attention, with everything happening with the documentary, and people were approaching me and my family and me changing numbers and all of the attention that brought, that was the reason why I left the state. Okay, and then your father got some benefits too, right? My parents were also going through the same thing that I was, so they did leave town as well. And the government paid for that, correct? I believe so, yeah. And then we talked about ultimately you got assistance with your Section 8 housing, but that's locally, right? Yes. All right, I think that might be it, Your Honor. Give me 1 second. Is that it? Redirect Appentine. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we ask if the defense counsel can pull up the last exhibit that they had on the screen. And then Cohen, the text messages. Yes, please. Bonjean, the boss baby text messages. Appentine, yes. And then we have redirect examination with Miss Appentine. Jane, can you see that on the screen? Reshona. Yes, in those text messages, what are you talking about? I'm just going to reread it. 1 second. Yep. Donnelly. The whole thing or just this one screenshot? Appentine, just the screenshot. Okay, so Reshona says, we're talking about scheduling a time where I needed to come in to speak with the AO. Appentine, can you go to the next page, please? Are you talking about scheduling generally here too? Yes. Can you go to the next one, please? You can go to the next page. And what are you talking about here? Scheduling again. Cohen. Okay, wait a minute. Page done messed up again. Okay, yes. Can you go to the next? Again, what are your messages about here? Scheduling. Can you go to the next message, please? Again, what are you talking about here? The trial date. The upcoming trial date, that the trial we're in right now is that for this case, correct. Can you go to the next message, please? Again, what are you talking about there? Trial. Can you go to the next one, please? Are you talking about schedule? What the next court dates and updates in this case? Yes. Can you go to the next message, please? That child, okay, so she does that. She keeps going back and round and round. The monkey's behind with all that. Okay, can you go to the next message? Again, are you talking about scheduling a time for the meeting? Okay, then she says, an angel getting on the line with Amelia or Melissa so that she can talk with you, correct? Can we go to the next message, please? And the next one, it says a name there. That was Amelia. Who is Amelia? Amelia, she works with Homeland Security, and it says Chris. Who is Chris? My attorney. And the other message says Melissa. Who is that? She works with Homeland Security as well. And they're agents that were working on this case, correct? Can you go to the next message, please? Okay, go to the next one, please. And these are what pictures are you talking about here? My pregnancy photos. I believe that's the last message, correct? You can take that down. And just a few questions for you. You were asked on direct about having counsel to go into the grand jury, the state grand jury, back in 2002. Do you remember those questions? Yes. Who provided that lawyer for you? Robert. You testified. You were asked questions in cross-examination about wires and checks that you received money for. Oh, Lord. Okay, yes, you checks you received money for to help you pay your rent. Is that right? Yes. And who did you talk to about receiving those rental payments? Robert. And who agreed to make those payments to you for your rent? Robert. You were asked on cross-examination about your contact with Mr. Kelly around the time in 2019. Do you remember those questions? Yes. You said that you called Robert because you were afraid about the situation with the tapes that you heard about the new tapes that Cook County had received. Yes. What were you afraid about? This situation resurfacing and another tape being released of he and I sexually engaging. And what? Strike that. You were asked on cross-examination that back when you were 14, 15, 16, you were denying your relationship to the world. Do you remember being asked that? Oh, Lord. Why is she repeating all this? Do you remember being asked those questions? Yes. And at that time, you were 14, 15, 16. Who instructed you to deny your relationship with Robert Kelly to the world? Robert. Again, you were asked questions about the DCFS and CPD interviews that happened in 2000. Do you remember those questions? Yes. And that you were wanting to continue your relationship with Mr. Kelly at the time? Yes. Do you remember those questions? Yes. And how old were you in 2000 around that time? About 16, 17, 16, 15, or 16. She didn't even know how damn old she was. Okay, you were asked some questions on cross-examination about what you were able to do after the 2008 trial, what Mr. Kelly allowed you to do after the 2008 trial. Do you remember those questions? Yes. What did Mr. Kelly allow you to do during the trial? Nothing. Where did you stay? Where did you sleep and stay at that time during the trial? I was in the garage in the Olympia Fields house that was turned into a gym, and I was in the office space in the house back and forth. Wait a minute, you didn't have no apartment, girl? Because I thought they said it was an apartment upstairs and that is where you were staying at. But you saying you was in the garage, child. All right, child. She probably lying. Where am I at? Let's see. She couldn't remember her age. What is the thing about? Okay, so you were in the garage. Okay, were there other places that you stayed during the trial when the trial was going on? Hotels. Where? Safe to say the suburbs of Chicago. Yes. And why were you staying in hotels during the trial? Because I was not to be in the house with all of the possibilities of things that were happening legally. You weren't supposed to be seen. Is that what you're saying? Yes. Okay, this is wrapping up, Your Honor. Now, those text messages that you were shown on cross-examination that were between you and Mr. Kelly, those were text messages in 2008. Is that correct? Yes. And about how old were you in 2018, guys? How old were you in 2018? I was about late 20s, early 30s. In your 30s? Yes. And what was Mr. Kelly's reaction to you as you saw in those text messages in 2018 where you were suggesting that you two get together? Bonjean. Okay, where? Lord have mercy. Why does this thing want to start jumping around now? Okay, hold on. Let me find my place. Okay, Bonjean, I'm going to object to, the text messages have been admitted. I don't, excuse me. If she's asking her to characterize, I think that's improper. Appentine, my question was, what was your, and then the judge says, I don't know, overruled, go ahead. So Appleton says, my question was, what was Mr. Kelly's reaction to you in 2018 when you suggested getting together in those texts? Did he respond? And then she said, yes. Did he respond every single time? No. When you were 14, 15, 16, did Mr. Kelly make efforts to see you? Yes. And how frequently did he make those efforts to see you at that time? Weekly. I'm sorry. Weekly, daily. And what happened on those occasions when you all were together and you and Mr. Kelly, you were those ages? Sometimes we would just hang out, or I would be in the studio, or sometimes we would have sexual engagement. A moment, Your Honor. No further questions. Okay, you can step down. Let's see. And then the witness is excused. And then we go to the judge. He says, call your next witness, please. And then Miss Pizzola, the United States calls Special Agent Melissa Sifferman. Can the witness be sworn, Your Honor? Oh, excuse me. And then they swear her in. And then she says, I do. And then the judge says, Miss Pizzola, you may question the witness. Thank you, Your Honor. Miss Melissa Schiffman, government's witness, sworn. Direct examination. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you please state and spell your name for the record? Melissa Sifferman, Siffermann. Where are you employed? I'm a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations. Is Homeland Security Investigations commonly referred to as HSI? Yes, it is. What is your job title? Special Agent. How long have you been a special agent with HSI? I was hired in January 2003, so going on 20 years. Is HSI a federal agency? It is. Specifically, is HSI one of the divisions within the Department of Homeland Security? That's correct. Is the Department of Homeland Security one of the departments of the executive branches of the United States? Yes, it is. Can you give us a general overview of the types of matters that HSI handles? HSI investigates federal violations of law, and that can include Joint Terrorism Task Force, weapons of mass destruction to narcotics, intellectual property rights, money laundering investigations, counter proliferations, and child exploitation and human trafficking. Okay, Special Agent, you mentioned child exploitation. Is CP offenses included in that area that HSI investigates? Yes, they are. Now, you stated you've been with HSI for approximately 20 years, correct? Yes. Where were you initially assigned when you joined the agency? I was initially assigned to a group that investigated aggravated felons that were non-citizens, and then I was transferred over to Financial Investigations Unit, which investigates illicit proceeds. And then from there, I went to a small sub-office in Hammond, Indiana, which covered all of HSI's programmatic areas. That's all the areas that we investigate. And then I moved back to the Financial Division Unit, and then I was assigned to an Administrative Support Unit for a couple of months, and then over to the OCDETF Strike Force, which is an organized crime drug enforcement task force. And then I was eventually assigned to the Human Trafficking, Smuggling, Commercial Sex Unit, and I've been with them for about 8 years in that unit. Are you currently assigned to the Human Trafficking and Smuggling Unit? Damn it, didn't she just say that? Oh my gosh, yes. Please, generally, describe your job. Okay, we don't want to hear about her job responsibilities. She talking about leads, following up on leads. In your experience investigating violations of federal CP laws, are you familiar with the various ways it's created and stored? Yes, I am. Can you explain to the jury some of the ways that it is created and stored? Well, when I began working for the government, it was approximately 20 years ago, so we were still looking for more photographs. So when we had reasons to believe a search warrant was obtained, we would search houses for photographs and other matters. And as time progressed, it changed to videotapes, like cassette tapes, and then as technology advanced, you also had to change your search methods, so it would be hard drives or computers, for example, thumb drives, cameras, SIM cards, iPads, tablets. As technology advances, so does the production of the videos. It's very similar to what you would say like a movie that you saw in the 80s, for example, like E.T., or even a song on the radio. That was on VHS cassette tape. Eventually, as technology advanced, it would be transferred to a DVD. And then you could download it. And today we can live stream it from our phones. It's still the same movie from the 80s. It's just now being transferred and contained on current digital media. In your experience investigating violations of federal laws, are you familiar with the various ways CP is created and stored? Yes, I am. Can you explain to the jury some of the ways that it is created and stored? Well, when I began, okay, did I already read this, child? I already read this. My page keeps skipping. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why. Okay, so she's talking about E.T. Okay, so she says, in your experience in CP investigations, have you reviewed CP on some of these types of media you just described? Yes, and you also mentioned the internet. In your experience with these investigations, how does the internet factor into the possession and dissemination of these videos? Well, like I explained, once something is on the internet, it again is like spread all over the internet, because as that digital media is contained, the internet works so that people who can access it can access all sorts of different web pages or pictures of videos that are also posted or downloaded. So it's kind of made like a digital primacy. So once you post something to the internet, it is extremely hard to remove it from that, if ever. And that's still like discussion if it can be done, given that websites collect data and information each time your web address is put there. So those images, posts, productions, videos remain on the internet. Okay, Special Agent Sifferman, in your role investigating CP offenses, can you walk us through what happens? Okay, let's see. So when your unit receives an item that contains suspected footage, right. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is to determine what type of media is contained on. For example, like a thumb drive or a hard drive or a phone or a cassette tape or a DVD. We transfer what we feel is the suspected imagery onto a working copy, and then from that we use that working copy for our investigation. We review it to determine if we can perhaps identify the victims and the perpetrators and location when the video is taken. After that, we submit it to HCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they act as kind of like a deconfliction for law enforcement. And on that submission, they aid in helping us determine if the victims have already been identified, self-identified, or identified by other law enforcement, or if it's a new submission, that type of thing. If it just helps us determine where we are in our investigation, if we're successfully identified the perpetrator thus far, and what investigative steps need to be taken after that. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few more questions about MCMEC in a minute, but first I want to focus a little more on when you receive the item containing suspected CP, and you stated that you made a working copy, correct? Yes. Where are those items? Does HSI have procedures as to where those items are inventoried and stored? Yes, that's correct. We have evidence guidelines and procedures put in place. And can you describe what those procedures are at a general level? So generally, when we have evidence, we always maintain it within HSI policy. And when something comes along like CP, for us, it's considered contraband. We secure that evidence. We always make sure it's in control and properly documented. And is that true for any working copies that the agent makes for purposes of the investigation and review? That's correct, because the working copies contain the CP, so we would need to secure that to ensure that it is not disseminated out to anyone else. Do some of the CP investigations that you work on ultimately result in criminal charges? Some of them do, yes. And in those instances where there are criminal charges and ongoing criminal matters, what happens when a third party, such as the defendant, needs to have access to the imagery that you've locked and secured in HSI's custody? So we make all the readily available to the defense or the defense counsel, and we make sure that it's viewed in a secure location. We have an agent who is present there the entire time to ensure that the imagery is not being reproduced and not disseminated out. So we make sure that it's in a controlled location. An agent is always present upon their viewing, but we just always make it readily available for their review. Was that procedure followed in this particular case that we are here today? Yes, it is. I specifically met with 2 of the defense teams, and I believe my supervisor met with the other defense team, and they viewed the imagery in this investigation. Now, you mentioned MCMEC. Can you take a step back and give us the definition of what MCMEC is again? What the name of the organization is? Sure, it stands for National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they act as a deconfliction organization. It is a non-government, not-for-profit organization, and they actually work to collect images of missing children with what are also exploited children. So images are collected with them, and they help in the identification and rescue of them or are either missing or being exploited. Okay, so we make all of the, okay, no, I done jumped all over the dang on place again. Okay. They also act as a conduit for law enforcement. You are able to reach law enforcement, has already submitted any images that you currently submitted, and you're able to put in contact with them to go over the investigation that may be of the same perpetrator. So in other words, it's a tool that you can use to coordinate across the country or different investigations. That's correct. They end up giving us a distribution report, and within that report, it just gives us some more information about how many times the suspected imagery or confirmed imagery has been submitted and who has previously submitted it. Okay, now that we have some background about HSI and your job duties, I'd like to ask you some questions about this case. In the course of your work as a special agent at HSI, did you become involved in the investigation of an individual named Robert Kelly? Yes, I did. When did you first become involved? I believe it was the middle of 2019, a couple of months in. And when you became involved in the investigation, what was your role at the time? The case was assigned to my unit, and I was considered a co-case agent. And generally speaking, what does that mean to be a co-case agent? We're just agents assigned to the case. We help with the investigation. After some time, did your role on the case change? It did. And when did that happen? I'm not sure the exact date, but it happened. But my previous co-workers left the unit, and then I just ended up being the lead against the agent on the case. And was one of those co-workers an agent named Amalia? That's correct. During the course of your involvement in the investigation of Robert Kelly, did you become familiar with Mr. Kelly's appearance? Yes, I did. And how did you do that? Well, I was also familiar with Mr. Kelly's appearance previously, both from television performances and music videos, and then during the course of the investigation, I was able to review more of Mr. Kelly's work products and therefore identified him. And during the course of your involvement, did you become familiar with Mr. Kelly's voice? I did. And is that through similar means that you just described? Yes. During the course of your involvement in the investigation, did you meet an individual that we are referring to as Jane, but whose real name is Reshona? Yes, I did. Have you met with Reshona in person multiple times during the course of the investigation? Yes, I have, and also spoken over the phone with her as well. During the time that you have spent with Reshona, have you become familiar with Reshona's appearance? Yes, I have. And during the time that you've spent with Reshona, have you become familiar with Reshona's voice? Yes. Okay. Ms. Palazza, and your honor, that takes me to a stopping point. If I may, we have another, the publication is next. All right, we will suspend now until the 2 o'clock for lunch. All rise. Okay, so then outside the presence of the jury, you wanted to discuss apparently procedures for showing the Pozzalo. Yes. Court, all right, go ahead. So Pozzalo, yes, Your Honor. So during the morning break, we had a chance to walk around the courtroom a little bit more. And the main problem that we're seeing is that when you are in where the spectators are sitting, you can see the jury monitors, and we don't see a way to, the jurors each have monitors in front of their seats. We are hard pressed after consulting with the various court personnel to come up with a way to ensure that the imagery is not published to the public, as Your Honor ruled in advance of trial, actually joined. Mr. Kelly joined that motion. We do not want these materials displayed to the public. Your Honor understood that. And I think that we're requesting is that the members of the public be removed from the courtroom. It's going to take about 30 minutes, I believe, at minimum, to get through these clips of the imagery. So we are asking that that be done, and just to protect the depictions from being published to the public. Shouldn't be published, and I don't think every seat allows the public to see the screens that the jurors are looking at. So I'm not quite certain why that has to be the approach. Okay, wait a minute, maybe Bonjean talking. And now I thought I heard that we are going to have 30 seconds to a couple of minutes of clips. Now I'm hearing 30 minutes that we have. We're going to be watching this. That's just different than what was stated earlier. So which one is it? So then Pozzalo says, Your Honor, I think Ms. Bonjean is not understanding. Each clip is 30 seconds. And then the judge says, well, how many clips are there? And then she says there's about 8 per video. It totals to about 5 or 6 minutes per 20 to 26 minute video. We have significantly cut it down, but given the dispute of age, the jurors need to see how old this individual was in the video and her talking about her age. We have no way of further cutting it down and allowing them to see the evidence. We have the burden of proving counts 1 through 3, and we're asking to show the clips that we've prepared. So Bonjean, Your Honor, I don't know. The dispute about age, I don't know what the government is referencing. She testified to what her age is. There's been no contrary testimony. That's really actually not really a basis for playing 30 minutes of alleged imagery. You really only need 10 seconds to see that. It's sexually explicit, which I even said in opening statements that this is just unnecessarily prejudicial. All they have to prove is that it's sexually explicit. And if they want to put it in a clip where she says her age, which she already testified to, then I suppose that's fine. But I don't think we should all be subjected to, I certainly don't think the jury should be subjected to unnecessary and cumulative video evidence that adds nothing to the case. Your Honor, and this is Pozzalo, this is the case. This is what the case is about. And if counsel wants to stipulate to the fact that Reshona was 14 in videos 1, 2, 3, and 4, we can have that discussion during the break. But absent that, the government needs to prove that she was a child when Mr. Kelly was with her in those videos. The judge, I'm more interested at this precise moment in whether or not it's absolutely necessary to clear the courtroom. Where would those who are cleared, where would they go? In the hallway, Your Honor, but then they can't hear the testimony. The testimony is going to be to the audio of the clips and just reading from the transcripts of the clips, and then we'll, the 2 jurors on each end, their video, their screens would be viewed. Is that the problem? Yes, standing in that area, you can see the juror screens, and we also have an issue with Mr. Kelly wishes to view the evidence in the case. Everyone sitting behind him can also see his screen. Well, that's just the press. They can go. Okay, nobody cares about the press. Are you suggesting the press be removed also? We are. Judge, this is a public courtroom. You know that they want it both ways. They want to prosecute Where is the press supposed to go? They're entitled to cover. Your Honor, we just don't want anyone to see the videos, as Your Honor ruled. And Ms. Bonjean joined in the motion that the public should not see the videos. So I don't know why we're having as long of a discussion about this now. If there is a way for people to sit in here and not see one of the 50 screens that is around the courtroom, we can do that. We just don't see a way to ensure that in this space. Bonjean. And I think it can be accomplished if we are creative about it. They want to clear the courtroom unnecessarily. I think people can move up in the rows. I think people can. I'm sure there's some people that don't necessarily even care to be here. There's a way. And then the judge. Yeah, what I'm going to suggest that we do is that those seated closest to the jury, where they could view all, will move over behind the press, over there and over there. Same thing. We'll do it that way. I don't think that we should close the courtroom. And what you hear is, I don't believe what they might hear over I don't believe is problematic. It's the viewing of the person, not listening to her. She's spoken. We know what she said, and she already testified what she said. So I don't think that's a problem. So we'll handle it that way. Pizzalo. And Your Honor, can I also, instead of doing this in front of the jury, we have our clips. They were made available to the defense. The judge. All right. When we assemble at 1 to 2 o'clock, we'll have, before the jury comes in, we'll move the people around and do it that way. Pizzalo. And is there going to be any objection from defense counsel as we're showing the clips that we're being cumulative? These have been available to her. I know, rather just get through this portion of the testimony without hearing an objection that we're showing too much. The judge. Do any of the defense counsel object if we don't clear the courtroom? Pizzalo. Sorry, Your Honor, I was referring to the clips themselves. She seems to have an objection to the clips we're showing, or the number of them. I would just like to address that here instead of in front of the jury. Bonjean. I'm not going to object to it in front of the jury. I want to get through it too. But my objection, and the government keeps saying that we were on notice. I'm not making a notice objection. I'm making a cumulative objection. 30 minutes of imagery, as they call it, is unnecessary. Your Honor, to clarify, well, it's 5 minutes to 6 minutes per video. I'm not going to prevent them. They are cutting it down. Originally, they wanted to play them all, and I said we wouldn't do that. And they cut it down to what, 5-6 minutes per video? So I'm going to allow that over the objection of at least Mr. Kelly about the non-clearing of the courthouse. Do either of the defendants object? If we don't clear the courtroom, do it the way I'm suggesting. Bonjean. No, we, on behalf of Mr. Kelly, we concur with the court's ruling. Brantley. Judge, we're fine with that. We don't judge. All right. We'll do it that way. One other thing before I forget. For your scheduling purposes, particularly for the government, on Tuesday the 23rd, I have a matter I have to attend, so we will have to adjourn at 2 o'clock on Thursday so that you don't schedule somebody. I don't want to inconvenience anybody. Then Appenting, yes, Your Honor, the 23rd or Thursday. The judge, Tuesday the 23rd. Did I say Thursday? I meant Tuesday. So you'll get an early adjournment. I think what we probably would do is just not have lunch. We'll just quit at 2 o'clock. All right. We'll see everybody at 2 o'clock. Recess from 1:30 p.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. Okay, so we are halfway through. I don't even know what day this is. Friday. Okay, so we are going to end this here. Go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.